Hi friends, I'm Scott from Sharky's Greenhouses and Beat Your Neighbor Fertilizer, and today we're looking at some oopses. Now this is a customer who reached out to us and was like, oh no, can you help me with my hanging basket? So she had 3 of these formerly beautiful hanging baskets and she was really having trouble. So, you know, we do help diagnose, and it's really hard for to diagnose from pictures, but she had sent us some pictures and said, Scott, can you help me with my hanging baskets? And she's actually one of our greenhouse customers. So she was in about 3 weeks ago and had 3 beautiful hanging baskets that used to look like this, and now they look like this. So what's going on? Well, that's what we're trying to dig into, and what I really want to talk about is what I call auditing yourself. Okay, so what do I mean by when I say audit yourself? That means that you need to take a good hard look, an honest assessment of what you're doing, because if this is what these hanging baskets looked like and now they look like this, the proof is in the pudding of something's wrong. These baskets are stressed out and they're telling you something is wrong. So you really have to be a willing student and be willing to say, you know what? Obviously something's going on and the person that's responsible for it is me. So being honest with yourself and auditing yourself of what is going on with these baskets. Now that's where we really have to dig into it and figure out why. So what is wrong with these hanging baskets that they went from looking like this to this in just a few short weeks? Well, you know, there's a million possibilities. So and you know what, she was very willing to accept that and say, you know, Scott, what am I doing wrong? And you know, I watched all your videos. I think I'm watering right. I have a moisture meter. I water in the morning. I don't water at night. And I brought the hanging baskets in when it was really cold at night, so they weren't outside. They didn't get frozen. You know, so that's kind of a checklist that we go down and we look at these things, and let's try to figure this out. So if I'm going to guess, you know, it's probably in the watering. And you know, if I was really assessing this, and if this hanging basket would look really spindly if it was going too dry, okay, if it was stressing out from being underwatered, the foliage would show it, and where it's real pointed and really you know, it's lacking water content, so it's real spindly. Now when it's overwatered, it can be really yellow. It'll show that, you know, it's the nutrients are being washed out every single day because it's constantly getting overwatered. And so one of the things that we do is let's look at the roots. Let's see if we can see what's going on. Now let me first say that these, yeah, they obviously they don't look like this, but these baskets are totally salvageable. So we can get this back on track and get this corrected and get this hanging basket to look just like this in maybe a couple weeks. It can be done, all right? But one of the first things you want to assess is, let's take a look at the roots, because they'll tell a lot of the tale. If they're being overwatered, those roots will rot down. So I had already pulled the hanger off this, and the roots really don't look bad. So they're not brown. If they'd be brown and slimy, that's a sure tale sign of it was being overwatered consistently. You know, every day, overwatering. That's why I tell people, don't water this hanging basket until it drips out. You know, until that water's running out. That is consistently overwatering, and these white roots will be brown and they'll shut off because they'll rot down. They'll shut off the water supply to the rest of the plant, and boom, that plant is dead. So this, it's not bad. This, I'm very hopeful. I have full confidence that these hanging baskets can be brought back because the roots are not slimy, they're not brown. I think it's just fine. What I really think what happened is probably inconsistent watering, because it's kind of hard for me to put my finger on this. It's not obvious that it was underwatered, it's not obvious that it was overwatered, so I'm going to go right in the middle and say I think it's inconsistent watering. And she said that she has a moisture meter, and I said, you might need to check that moisture meter. We're using a moisture meter as a tool, but sometimes tools can be a little bit off, so you have to have a little bit of discernment in using that moisture meter and saying, okay, you know what? I put the moisture meter in there and it's telling me it's too dry, but boy, it feels heavy and it feels wet. That's where you have to audit it. You have to really say, is that accurate? Is that true? Because if it was true, it should look like this if I'm doing everything right. So it might have been even in the tool that she was using, and she was using that, for her own assurance that she's watering it correctly. But so, it's just getting this right, and this will be no problem to get these hanging baskets right back on track. I've seen a lot worse, and it's funny, we have customers that come in and they don't water their hanging basket for 3 weeks. I mean, not an ounce of water. And then they bring it in to me and they're like, hey, what's wrong with my hanging basket? And it always, they haven't watered it in 3 weeks. And that soil is just like shrunken in and it's like concrete. But right before they show it to me, guess what they do? They pour some water onto it. They're gonna fool the bald guy that has a greenhouse and doesn't know what he's talking about. This is not my first rodeo. It's like, well, all right, so you just watered it 30 seconds ago and that's the first drink it's had in 3 weeks. No, it's dead because you haven't watered it in 3 weeks. That's why. But these are not that bad. We're gonna hit them with the Beat Your Neighbor fertilizer, so they're gonna be in my care for a few weeks. And what I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to hit them with our Beat Your Neighbor fertilizer probably every other day, because what I'm hopeful is this foliage is looking pretty good. It's not yellow. It's green. It's there. It just needs a little bit of care. So that's where we're getting her back on track. And I'm so glad that she was a willing student. She was willing to audit herself, and she was willing to ask me for help and say, Scott, what am I doing wrong? There's something, because this is what they looked like a few weeks ago, this is what they look like now. And I think it's just in that consistent watering that we want to be right down the middle. We don't want to be too dry, we don't want to be too wet, but otherwise she was doing everything pretty much right on. But that little percentage took her down to this. So hit them with the Beat Your Neighbor fertilizer. She was fertilizing once a week, so they're still kind of green. They're just wasn't quite there with the watering. So she's going to get that on track, and I'm confident that these hanging baskets will look like this in just a couple weeks. Hey, if you're liking our videos, please give us a thumbs up, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we have lots of videos, and be sure to head on over to our BeatYourNeighbor.com website, where we have lots of blog articles, tips and tricks on garden and plant care just like this. You can head over to our BeatYourNeighbor.com website. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.